Hey, it's James Lynch. I'm sure you caught it yesterday on the UFC 321 pay-per-view that they announced the main card for UFC 322. Shout out to Mike Bond for getting the screen grab. And all of this looks great except for one fight. Of course, you got the title fight in the main event for the welterweight title. Jack Della Maddalena, Islam Makhachev, one of the best fights we're going to see this year. We got Valentina Shevchenko taking on Zhang Weili. Super fight in the flyweight division. Weili Zhang moving up. That'll be a fun one. You've got Sean Brady and Michael Morales. Big implications for the welterweight division. You've also got Leon Edwards taking on Carlos Prates. All equally important fight for the welterweight division. But then they've decided to add Bo Nickal on the main card again, and this has been a big talking point throughout Bo Nickal's career. If you remember, he basically came out and said, I'm a main card fighter, I should be on the pay-per-view, all that. But Bo Nickal is coming off one of the worst losses we've seen from a betting favorite this year, someone that had been hyped big time, and he got absolutely destroyed in his last fight against Reinier de Ridder. I don't understand this. I mean, I do from the perspective that the UFC is still trying to sell people on Bo Nickal as being some sort of legit prospect. But when you have a loss that was that bad in his last fight like he did, and if you missed it, obviously Reinier de Ridder finishing Bo Nickal in their fight, why are you putting him out here again and hoping for the best? And also the matchmaking, I talked about this when the fight was announced. This is the fight they're trying to get Bo back on the winning track. There's a reason he's not fighting a ranked opponent or someone that could be much of a threat. And that's why Vieira's getting the spot here. But I think this is just the wrong move from the UFC. I think if you talk to most fans, I mean, look at the way people responded when Bo Nickal lost that fight. Fans are not wanting to tune in and see Bo Nickal fight. Fans are upset that, obviously Bo Nickal's getting promoted this much. And I think this is going to backfire in the UFC. And by the way, I blame the UFC more than anyone. They're the ones who make this make the order, the bout order, I should say. I don't know if Bo Nickal had a say in this or not. I haven't heard him, say anything similar like we've seen in the past to him demanding to be on the main card. But the thing that really bothers me about this placing is just because, placement I should say, is that you got a bunch of other good fights that could fit the bill. So first and foremost, Beneil Dariush and Benoit Saint-Denis was the fight they should have added on here. Beneil Dariush coming off a really good win in his last fight over Renato Moicano. Benoit Saint-Denis rebounding with a couple wins, after his last fight. Getting it done over Rufi, and then obviously got the win over Kyle Prepolek. So that's kind of an important fight for the lightweight division. But Bo Nickal and Rodolfo Vieira has very little impact in the middleweight division. And so I don't really understand why they're not putting Dariush and Saint. Not to mention, Dariush and Saint-Denis is going to be a much better fight, right? We're going to see two guys that aren't afraid to go out there and finish the fight, two guys that are, very violent when it comes to their matchups. You're not really going to get that in this Bo Nickal fight. The other fight I would have entertained as well, and maybe people would disagree with me here, but I think Aaron Blanchfield and Tracy Cortez is a very important fight for the women's flyweight division. You got Blanchfield just with the one loss there to Manon Fiorot, who we just saw, a couple weeks ago, get a pretty impressive victory over, Jasmine Jasudavicius, getting the first round finish there. She's only got the one loss. She's relatively young in the weight class here at 26. You've got Tracy Cortez, who's, just hasn't been super active, but also has not lost in a while. I guess she did have the loss to Rose in last July, but outside that is a pretty good record overall, including a win over Jasmine as well. That's another fight I would have considered putting on the main card here. So again, there were other options. Even if they wanted to go with Malcolm Wellmaker on the main card, I don't think he's at the point yet of being a pay-per-view draw, but I can understand it for the fact that he's undefeated. He's American. They're trying to push him a little bit. I would understand him being on the main card more than Bo Nickal. I just don't think this is the right move for the UFC. It was really interesting when Patchy Mix lost against Mario Batista. They kind of buried him on the undercard and obviously didn't end up winning, but I feel like that was very strategic where they're like, okay, maybe we can just get him a win and not put as much focus on Patchy and everything else. They're doing the opposite here to Nickal. And the other thing I'll mention too, this could backfire in the UFC. I don't think it's completely out of the realm that Rodolfo Vieira could win this fight. He's got far more experience in the octagon. He's got more fights. Yes, he's older, but this is also a guy that's got a really good jiu-jitsu pedigree. Remember the whole thing with Bo Nickal was he didn't want to take Paul Craig to the ground because he was worried about getting submitted. I mean, Rodolfo Vieira's got some good submissions as well, though, come to think of it, I'm trying to remember the last time he's got like a submission victory. It's been a while. Armin Petrosian, I guess, last February. But that's one thing Bo Nickal's got to watch out for is this guy does have a decent ground game. Now, granted, this isn't against the best opposition, but something to consider as well. So I don't know. Again, I think there's a couple things at play here. The first and foremost is you saw the fan reaction when Bo Nickal lost. Fans don't like Bo Nickal. It's not something they want to tune in and see at this point. People feel like the UFC was trying to sell us on a fighter that really wasn't that talented. And it was clearly too much of a jump up for Bo Nickal when he fought Reinier de Ridder. If you look at the stats from that fight right here, the fight wasn't close, right? Bo Nickal, 8 significant strikes, 22-8, big gap there. The takedowns, Nickal did get one takedown. De Ridder attempted 3 himself. It didn't work out. Total strikes was 91-24. It was a total blowout here. You look at De Ridder in the red. I just think that, and now obviously Vieira is not going to give him that same type of tough matchup here. But at the same time, like, is this like, what happens if Nickal loses? What if Vieira pulls this off? This is going to be really embarrassing for Bo Nickal if he ends up losing here, if he's lost back-to-back fights. Is this the best idea, having him, you know, kind of featured on this pay-per-view? I don't think it is. And then, like I said, the other thing is that the fans don't really want to see this matchup here. So again, I think the UFC, they made a mistake here. They should have put one of those two fights that I just mentioned on the main card. I think, you know, this is a fan base that is very vocal if they don't like things. And I think putting Bo Nickal on here doesn't make sense. The other thing we got to remember too is that, you know, if there's an injury in any of these fights, like if something happens, let's knock on wood, it doesn't, but anything happens between, you know, say Brady and Morales or Edwards Prates, you know, you've got other fights. Again, you can mix up the card a little bit. This card is stacked enough where if there's an injury to any of these fights, like for example, if something happens in Edwards Prates, you could move a Brady Morales or vice versa. That's kind of what I'm getting at here, that you have a lot of options in terms of what they could do with the main card. But yeah, that's the one thing for me. This is still a great pay-per-view. Again, I think Islam JDM might be one of the best fights we're going to see this year, as far as just not only name value, but just, you know, the implications. Can Islam become a double champ? Can Jack stop Islam, who's looked unstoppable, you know, in a number of his fights? And you can see here a lot of people kind of agreeing with me here on that as well. You know, we've got people here. Dariush and Benoit Saint-Denis deserve it more. You know, what else? This guy says, I'm surprised Leon Edwards is so far down in the card. I mean, he's on the main card. That doesn't matter. Yeah. So this is where, you know, people are upset. And that's the other thing I didn't even mention, is that Bo Nickal's ahead of Leon Edwards and Carlos Prates. Like, a former champion in Leon Edwards and Carlos Prates, one of the most exciting fighters in the UFC. That should be over Bo Nickal and Rodolfo Vieira, if we're going by the bout order as well. But yeah, I just think bad move here by the UFC. Again, you got to listen to your fans a little bit more, I think, and kind of have an idea of what people want to watch. And I think most people would prefer Bo Nickal on the prelims. And this, again, people is going to get people to not like Bo again, because there's going to be a huge sector of the fan base being like, I bet Bo demanded to get on the main card. Maybe he did. I don't know. There's no proof of that, but it's the UFC we have to blame here in this case, because they're the ones who do the bout order. And I feel bad for Dariush and Saint-Denis. I mean, especially Dariush. You think of all the times that he's been passed over for big fights, or, you know, hasn't been able to get fights booked, opponents switch ups and all that. And here he is on the prelims of this MSG card. I feel a little bit bad for him in that sense. But yeah, the UFC's still trying to sell us on Bo Nickal, and he better win, because again, the backlash is going to be even worse on this card, because this is a marquee pay-per-view. Yeah, so I just think bad move here by the UFC, trying to sell us on Bo Nickal at this point. And again, even if he beats Rodolfo Vieira, even if he goes out there and finishes Rodolfo Vieira, people still aren't going to be convinced. Bo needs a lot of work if he wants to become this, you know, top fighter that the UFC is sort of hoping for in the middleweight division. And I think this is just, there's never been a case more of the UFC really wanting an American champion or someone that they're trying to build up more than Bo Nickal being placed on this card. So yeah, just wanted to do a quick video on this. I think the UFC is making a mistake putting Bo Nickal on the main card over some of the other matchups I just suggested. So I want to know what you guys think in the comment section below. What fight would you like on the pay-per-view instead of Bo Nickal and Rodolfo Vieira? Would love to hear from you. Follow me on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, @Lynch on Sports. My name is James Lynch. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.